Okay, we're on Act 4, Scene 2, which takes place in Fife, Macduff's castle. And remember, in the last scene, Macbeth ended by saying that he was going to kill everybody in Macduff's family. This is very gangsterish. And so I regard this as like the saddest scene in all of Shakespeare, but that's just an opinion. We enter Lady Macduff and her child and Ross, the Thane of Messaging. And Lady Macduff says, "What had he done to make him fly the land?" And Ross says, "You must have patience, madam. He had none. His flight was madness. When our actions do not, our fears do make us traitors. You know not whether it was his wisdom or his fear. Wisdom? To leave his wife, to leave his babes, his mansion and his titles in a place whence himself does fly? He loves us not. He wants the natural touch. For the poor wren, the most diminutive of birds, will fight for her young ones in her nest against the owl. All is the fear and nothing is the love, as little as the wisdom where the flight so runs against all reason." What's going on here is Lady Macduff is angry. She's furious because her husband has left England. And Ross is saying, well, he knows what he's doing. And she's like, are you crazy? He leaves his family to fend for themselves while this owl is lurking about, which is probably Macbeth. So she's very upset, and Ross is trying to soothe her. He says, "My dearest cousin, I pray you, school yourself. But for your husband, he is noble, wise, judicious, and best knows the fits of the season. I dare not speak much further. But cruel are the times when we are traitors and do not know ourselves, when we hold rumor from what we fear, yet know not what we fear, but float upon a wild and violent sea each way and move. I'll take my leave of you. Shall not be long, but I'll be here again. Things at the worst will cease, or else climb upward to what they were before. My pretty cousin, blessing upon you." Okay, I love these words by Ross because they always seem to indicate the current times. Cruel are the times, and that could be now, that could be then, that could be any time in between, when we are traitors and do not know ourselves, when we hold rumor from what we hear. Like, how often do people believe things that aren't true because it's just in their nature to? Yet know not what we fear, but float upon a wild and violent sea each way and move. Remember Macbeth, part of his curse from the witches is that he will lose his navigation and he will be floating at a violent sea, unsure of which way he is going. Well, Ross is talking about the entire population of the earth is in the same situation. We're afloat in a wild, natural, violent sea that cares nothing about us, and we have no say in like which direction we go. And then he says, "But I'll see you later. Bye." Okay, so Ross also leaves Lady Macduff. So she's already been left by her own husband and now her cousin. All right, and so now it's just Lady Macduff and her child. Fathered he is, and yet he is fatherless. I am so much a fool. Should I stay longer, it would be my disgrace and your discomfort. I take my leave at once, and Ross exits. So he leaves also. So now it's just Lady Macduff and her son. "Sirrah, your father's dead. And what will you do now? How will you live?" Okay, the son's supposed to be like some kind of smart aleck. He says, "As birds do, mother." "What? With worms and flies?" "With what I get, I mean. And so do they." Okay, so he's like, "We'll get by, mother. We'll get by, by scavenging and doing what we can to get by." And Lady Macduff says, "Poor bird, thou'dst never fear the net nor lime, the pitfall nor the gin." That means like bird traps. Why should I, mother? Poor birds they are not set for. My father's not dead for all your saying. Lady Macbeth says, yes, he is dead. How wilt thou do for a father? Nay, how will you do for a husband? Why, I can buy me 20 at any market. Then you'll buy 'em to sell 'em again. Oh, thou speakest with all thy wit, and yet in faith with wit enough for thee. Was my father a traitor, mother? Ay, that he was. What is a traitor? Why, one that swears and lies. And be all traitors that do so? Every one that does so is a traitor, and must be hanged. And must they all be hanged that swear and lie? Every one. Who must hang them? Why, the honest men. Then the liars and the swearers are fools, for there are liars and swearers enow to beat the honest men and hang up them. Now, God help thee, poor monkey, but how wilt thou do for a father? Okay, let's backtrack a little bit and unpack some of this. Okay, now when Lady Macbeth is saying that her son's father is dead, she's not being literal, obviously, because Macbeth is not dead, but he's abandoned them. But let's extrapolate this. Okay, Macbeth is this boy's father, but let's think more spiritually here or symbolically here. Like, what is the father? Or what metaphor do we use to describe our God? We call him our Father. So what Shakespeare's doing here is he's saying, he's implying that what would we do if God was dead? What if God has abandoned us? Because God is our Heavenly Father. And the son is, skeptical of the mother and argues with him. But what they're really talking about here, or what Lady Macbeth is really talking about here, is like, what if God has abandoned us? And the son's more aloof. And he gets into this whole, well, if my biological father is a traitor, and if all people who are traitors should be hanged, then none of them should be hanged, because there's so many traitors in this world that they could overpower all the honest men. He's saying that there's not enough honest men in this world to punish all the crooked men, which is also kind of true. And then she calls him a monkey. And then the son finally ends the argument with, if father were dead, you'd weep for him. If you would not, it were a good sign that I should quickly have a new father. Poor prattler, how thou talkest. All right, then enter a messenger, and this messenger says, bless you, fair dame. I am not to you known, though in your state of honor I am perfect. I doubt some danger does approach you nearly. If you will take a homely man's advice, be not found here. Hence, with your little ones, to fright you thus, methinks, I am too savage. To do worse to you were fell cruelty, which is too nigh your person. Heaven preserve you, I dare abide no longer, and then the messenger exits. So this is the third time that a man has abandoned Lady Macbeth, and this one warns us, like, get out. There is bad stuff coming. You need to get out right now. Of course, he doesn't offer any help. He just runs away. And then Lady Macbeth says some very sad words. She says, where should I fly? Whither should I fly? I have done no harm, but I remember now I am in this earthly world, where to do harm is often laudable, to do good sometime accounted dangerous folly. Why then, alas, do I put up that womanly defense to say I have done no harm? This is so sad. Okay, what Lady Macbeth is saying is, well, first she puts up the argument, well, why would anybody harm me? I've never harmed anybody. But then she remembers herself, and she remembers what world she lives in, that the world is cruel and does harm, and doing harm is often celebrated, and to do good is often condemned. So like she's living in a world where nothing makes sense, and where, you know, virtues are actually a vice, and vice is actually a virtue. Fair is foul, and foul is fair. But then she remembers herself that saying she doesn't live in a fair world, and then enter the murderers. Okay, so the murderers come in, and she says, "What are these faces?" And the first murderer says, "Where is your husband? I hope in no place so unsanctified where such as thou mayst find him. He is a traitor." And then the son says, "Thou liest, thou shag-haired villain." "What, you egg?" He's making fun of his youth. And stabs him. And the murderer says, "Young fry of treachery." And the son screams out, "He has killed me, mother. Run away, I pray you," and dies on the stage. Lady Macduff runs off the stage, crying, "Murder!" Exit murderers following her. So everybody in Macduff's family is now killed except for Macduff. Which brings us to scene 3, which we'll get into on the next video.